Academic Staff Union of Universities suspends planned strike. Governor Babajide Sanwo Olu assures Lagosians of rehabilitation work on Lagos-Badagry Expressway. In international news, jet manufacturer Boeing says some parts in its 737 MAX jet, different from the anti-stalling software, may have been properly manufactured. And in sport, Enugu State to host 2020 Powerlifting World Cup.
This is ANN News.
I am Olajumoke Olatunji. The Nigerian Supreme Council for Islamic Affairs says Muslims should look out for the new moon to signal the end of the 2019 Ramadan fast. The council has released a statement that anyone who cites the new crescent should contact any of the 30 top Muslim clerics across the country whose contact details are provided in the statement. The council's President General has enjoined the Nigerian Muslim Ummah to search for the new moon immediately after sunset on Monday. Academic Staff Union of Universities has shelved its announced plan to embark on another round of strikes over the federal government's non-fulfillment of its part of the agreement it's reached with the union. Also, President Professor Abiodun Guyemi wants the federal government to provide evidence it had mainstreamed in the 2019 budget. The balance of the 25 billion naira earned academic allowances earlier released to universities. Heads of state of the Economic Community of West African States, ECOWAS, will soon make a final decision on the operational takeoff of a single currency for the region, after it receives a report from the task force during its midterm summit later this month. The head of ECOWAS National Unit in the Nigerian Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Musa Nuhu, says there was also a committee of governors of central banks in West Africa working on the single currency for the region. The Presidential Task Force on ECOWAS single currency is headed by President Mahamudu Isufu of Niger. A new speaker is expected to emerge in the House of Representatives in just under 2 weeks. Speaker of the House of Representatives, Yakubu Dogara, has denied any interest in joining the race in the incoming 9th National Assembly. Dogara says those campaigning for him on social media are mischief makers. He says if he nursed any interest, he would have communicated such through his official channels. Frontrunner for the Speaker's gavel, Femi Gbajabiamila, is being challenged by 5 other members of the House. All Progressives Congress has a clear majority in the incoming House of Representatives, having more than 200 of the 360 seats. Lagos State Governor Babajide Sanwo Olu has assured Lagosians during an inspection visit on Sunday that repair work would commence this month on the Lagos-Badagry Expressway. Addressing residents' complaints of neglect by the state government, the governor says repairs would be done from Mazamaza to Kukumaiko once the required financing was in place. Meanwhile, the Lagos Waste Management Authority has started an intensive waste evacuation operation it calls Lagos at 4 a.m. to tackle improper waste disposal in the state. The agency says it was in furtherance of the executive order signed by Governor Sanwo Olu against indiscriminate waste dumping. Loma Public Relations Officer Obina Yenali says this is to fast-track the process of restoring environmental sustainability in Lagos. Securities and Exchange Commission has set up an interim management team headed by Mutio Sumonu to oversee the affairs of Endo PLC and conduct an extraordinary general meeting before next month to appoint new directors to the board of the company. That board will subsequently select a management team to run the oil company. After investigation, SEC had ordered the Group Chief Executive Officer Wale Tinubu and other affected board members to resign. The commission has barred Tinubu and Deputy Group Chief Executive Officer Omafoye Boyo from being directors of public companies in Nigeria for 5 years. The commission says findings from the report reveal serious infractions such as false disclosures, market abuses, faulty financial statements, internal control failures. It also mentioned corporate governance lapses, irregular approval of directors' remuneration, unjustified disbursements to directors and management of the company, and related party transactions not conducted at arm's length.
You are watching ANN.
Dear Mommy, you went out that night with the baby in your tummy, but you did not come back. The baby is very fine and she eats and sleeps a lot. Everyone says that you are in a better place, but I miss you so much. I keep asking them, where is the better place, but nobody answers me. Auntie Kemi just hugs me and says go and play. Mommy, I miss you. Please, when are you coming home?
I still do miss you, Mom. And in honor of your memory, I'm a doctor today working with the MTN Foundation to save mothers and children every day.
Ending mother and child mortality in Nigeria is dear to us. We will keep strengthening this most important bond just for you.
Welcome back. This is in the news. Now to the rest of the African continent, where some marches going on this Monday. The situation in the Sudan has degenerated as the military has shot live ammunition at certain protesters near the military headquarters in Khartoum this morning, killing 2 and injuring many. Sudanese citizens have been pouring into the capital, Khartoum, from other parts of the country to join in the long-running sit-in protest. When the crackdown began and shots rang out as the tents were set ablaze, protesters started moving to another part of the city to continue the demonstrations. Sudan has been governed by a transitional military council since President Omar al-Bashir was overthrown in a coup in April. Protesters have been demanding that a civilian government should take over the running of the country. The Sudanese Professionals Association, organizers of the nationwide protest, said in a short statement the military crackdown was an attempt to disperse the sit-in protesters. Eyewitnesses say demonstrators burned tires and set up barricades to try fending off security forces. And meanwhile, more than 70 persons have been arrested in demonstrations in Cameroon as thousands of supporters of Maurice Kamto have defied a heavy police presence in a stadium protest in several towns of the Central African state. Kamto is the man who says he won the October presidential election, and one of the protesters' demands is the immediate release of the party leader. Scores of his supporters have been jailed since January, and protesters in Yaoundé, the country's capital, said on Sunday they will continue protesting until they find justice, which they said Cameroon President Paul Biya has denied them. They vowed not to bow to pressure, but to keep pressing for freedom for Kamto and those supporters arrested at the beginning of the year. At least a dozen persons, including Kamto's first vice president, Mamadou Mota of the MRC party, had been arrested and detained in Yaoundé and Douala. Cameroon's Minister of External Relations, Lajuin Mbela, had warned last week during a meeting with diplomats, United Nations staff and international NGOs that the planned protest would not be tolerated. The African Continental Free Trade Agreement came into effect on Thursday. It is expected to progressively eliminate tariffs on intra-African trade and create a single African market of more than 1 billion consumers. The African Continental Free Trade Agreement was launched in Kigali, Rwanda's capital, in March last year. It aims to create a tariff-free continent that can grow local businesses, boost intra-African trade, spur industrialization, and create more jobs. And so far, the pact has been signed by 52 members of the African Union, with the exception of Nigeria, Eritrea, and the Republic of Benin. If all 55 AU members join, it will become the world's largest free trade zone by numbers of countries, and it would cover more than 1 billion people with a combined gross domestic product of $2.5 trillion.
The African Continental Free Trade Agreement, which will progressively eliminate tariffs on intra-African trade and create a single African market of over 1 billion consumers, has come into effect. The African Continental Free Trade Agreement aspires to create a tariff-free continent that can grow local businesses, boost intra-African trade, spur industrialization, and create more jobs.
At the moment, until this thing happened, Africa was fragmented. You had regional trading blocks in West Africa, for example, in ECOWAS. You had regional trading blocks in East Africa, the East African Community, EAC. You have another one in Southern Africa, in SADC. So you have this spaghetti maze of very fragmented, relatively small trading blocks, which made it difficult to trade amongst Africans and for international investors to freely trade and do business in Africa.
The agreement will gradually eliminate 90% of tariffs on intra-African trade, making it easier for African businesses to trade within the continent and benefit from the growing African market, said the African Union.
For goods that are produced in Africa, they will be traded duty-free within Africa. So for companies that are coming outside Africa, they need to establish companies within Africa for them to enjoy that duty-free status.
China has been Africa's largest trading partner for 10 consecutive years, with an accumulated investment of over $110 billion in the continent. Positive results have been achieved in the joint construction of Belt and Road projects in recent years as well. China has signed memorandums of understanding with 39 African countries and the AU Commission. Cooperation with China has substantially advanced Africa's economic and social development.
We look to China as a very important partner for Africa, be it on the issue of development assistance, be it a trade partner, and so on. Africa pursues free trade globally and promotes those values globally, and believes that we're looking for an African fair share of international trade. And what we see from the Chinese practices and so on is in conformity with those international standards.
After its implementation, the African Free Trade Accord is also projected to boost intra-Africa trade by more than 52% by the year 2020, according to the United Nations Economic Commission for Africa.
You are watching ANN.
Dear mommy, you went out that night with the baby in your tummy, but you did not come back. The baby is very fine and she eats and sleeps a lot. Everyone says that you are in a better place, but I miss you so much. I keep asking them, where is the better place? But nobody answers me. Auntie Carrie just hugs me and says, go and play. Mommy, I miss you. Please, when are you coming home?
I still do miss you, Mom. And in honor of your memory, I'm a doctor today working with the MTN Foundation to save mothers and children every day.
Ending mother and child mortality in Nigeria is dear to us. We will keep strengthening this most important bond just for you.
Welcome back. This is ANN News. On the international scene, Jet manufacturer Boeing has notified the Federal Aviation Administration the parts of the 737 MAX and 737 NG may have been improperly manufactured and may not meet regulatory requirement for strength and durability. The jet manufacturer has identified the serial numbers of the aircrafts in which the suspect parts may have been installed. The FAA said the affected parts may be susceptible to premature failure or cracks resulting from the improper manufacturing process. The FAA said it will issue an airworthiness directive mandating service actions to remove the parts. The agency said it had alerted international civil aviation authorities of the issue as well. The 737 MAX is already grounded by the FAA in the wake of a fatal crash in Ethiopia in March. All 157 persons on board were killed. The crash in Ethiopia happened months after a fatal crash in Indonesia in which 189 persons died. The FAA has given no timeline for when the 737 MAX will be certified to fly again. U.S. President Donald Trump arrived in Britain on Monday on a state visit in combative mood, following up his weekend interventions over Brexit with a broadside against London's mayor, whom he called a stone-cold loser. The president's plane had not even touched down when he tweeted that Mayor Sadiq Khan had done a terrible job. Khan had been highly critical of the red carpet welcome laid on for Trump. Queen Elizabeth II is welcoming Trump and his wife to Buckingham Palace today to a guard of honor, a private lunch and a glittery state banquet. Beneath the pomp and ceremony, Britain is in turmoil with Prime Minister Theresa May due to step down within weeks over her handling of the country's exit from the European Union. Trump has said in some British newspaper interviews that Britain should walk away from Brexit talks. He also recommended that the UK should refuse to pay its agreed divorce bill to the EU and should leave the union with no deal. London Mayor Khan has led opposition to Trump's three-day state visit, condemning what he called Trump's divisive behavior. Large protests have planned in London, while opposition politicians are also boycotting the state banquet on Monday night. The U.S.-China trade war has continued to show signs it could bite hard on American farmers and retailers, just as bad as it could affect Chinese economy. Some experts have said the trade war may lead to negative economic impact in both countries. The signs are now already showing in some sectors in the United States, Hendrik Sidbrander reports.
Steve Nine has been farming and ranching for some 45 years. These are tough times on the Colorado prairie. Several years of low crop prices, punctuated by a trade war, have left Nine and his fellow farmers on edge.
You might get behind a little this year, a little more the next year. Well, we're about the fifth year, like I say, then with these tariffs, putting these prices lower, definitely they're concerned.
300 kilometers to the west at a women's sportswear company called Crimson Clover.
We specialize in knitwear, mainly sweaters. The best knitters in the world are in China.
Founder Rhonda Swenson worries about today's tariffs and those the Trump administration threatens to impose on China in the near future.
The final round is everything we do, everything. So we're reeling a little bit. It's going to be a pretty big hit.
Two very different lines of work, but whether it's the higher prices the clothing firm pays for its products or the lower prices the farmer gets for his crops, the U.S.-China trade dispute is making its presence felt here in the heartland. Nine grows wheat, which some soybean farmers east of here are turning to now that China has largely stopped buying their original crop. That has a ripple effect.
Anytime you flood one market, then we're going to have lower prices, and this wheat the prices haven't been hardly breaking even on that either.
This wholesaler's costs went up after previous tariffs. A potential last round will inevitably be passed on to its 475 U.S. retailers.
We have to make margin. There's no way pricing isn't going up. I mean, it has to, and so the end consumer will start feeling it.
Workarounds are in short supply in both places. Nine has thought about expanding his cow herd, but China placed tariffs on U.S. beef.
It did knock our calf price down some.
Swenson has put expansion at the company on hold and is looking into using factories in countries besides China.
It takes us 18 to 24 months to bring a product to market. So you can't just up and move.
Suddenly, the trade issue takes up a lot of their day.
I don't understand it. I don't understand how we can make such quick decisions that affect so many people in so many ways.
Whether in the city or the country, the landscape has changed for many business people. They're now busy figuring out how they can adjust.
Still on U.S.-China trade war, China says it will start listing names of unreliable foreign entities in commerce and trade. That means that can attempt to name and shame companies, groups or individuals that have abandoned the country in its trade war with the United States in fear of losing their stand with the U.S. America recently banned the sale or release of its technology to Chinese companies. Although Huawei says the impact will be minimal, this is expected to slow down its progress in the 5G technology race.
China will draw up a list of unreliable foreign firms and other entities in accordance with relevant laws and regulations. Foreign enterprises, organizations and individuals that do not comply with market rules, violate the spirit of contract, block or cut supplies to Chinese enterprises for non-commercial purposes, and seriously damage the legitimate rights and interests of Chinese enterprises, will be put on this list, according to Chinese Ministry of Commerce.
一些外国实体出于非商业目的
Some foreign entities have violated market rules for non-commercial purposes and launched discriminatory measures against Chinese companies. Such moves endanger the legitimate interests of enterprises, harm China's national security, and threaten the global industrial and supply chain. This has also inflicted a negative impact on the global economy, enterprises, and consumers.
China decided to establish this unreliable entity list system in order to protect international economic and trade rules and the multilateral trading system, to oppose unilateralism and trade protectionism, and to safeguard China's national security, social and public interests and the legitimate rights and interests of enterprises, according to the spokesman. Specific measures on listed foreign entities will be announced soon.
Up next, sports. Enugu State emerges host of 2020 Powerlifting World Cup. Please stay with us.
You are watching ANN.
Dear mommy, you went out that night with the baby in your tummy, but you did not come back. The baby is very fine and she eats and sleeps a lot. Everyone says that you are in a better place, but I miss you so much. I keep asking them, where is the better place, but nobody answers me. Auntie Carrie just hugs me and says go and play. Mommy, I miss you. Please, when are you coming home?
I still do miss you, Mom. And in honor of your memory, I'm a doctor today working with the MTN Foundation to save mothers and children every day.
Ending mother and child mortality in Nigeria is dear to us. We will keep strengthening this most important bond just for you.
Welcome back. This is in News and Sports. Enugu State has won the hosting right for next year's Nigeria Powerlifting World Cup. Nigeria Powerlifting Federation President Queen Ubo confirmed this on Sunday after the group's first annual general meeting. Governor Ifeanyi Ugwuanyi and his deputy are the grand patrons of the federation. Ubo says both parties have been supportive. Officials of the Nigeria Football Federation are at loggerheads with the Ministry of Sports over the past Minister Solomon Dalong's exclusion of the cost of running this year's AFCON from the ministry's budget. NFF says its main challenge is how to secure funds to prepare the players for the tournament in Egypt. Apart from the Nations Cup, which begins in 3 weeks, Nigeria is also involved in the ongoing FIFA Under-20 World Cup and FIFA Women's World Cup later this year. Recipe for poor performance already brewing. That is in the news this evening. Thank you for joining us. For details on this and other stories, visit our social media platforms and join the conversation on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at ANN Africa TV. I am Olajumoke Olatiji. Have a pleasant evening.